Welcome, you guys. Tonight, we're going to be answering the question, is the Ensoniq SQ-1 a legendary synthesizer? So, a couple of things to say real quick. This is a KS-32, not an SQ-1 like in the thumbnail. So why is that? This is actually the final version of the SQ-1. There's a bunch of different models of the SQ-1 series, and the final one was the KS-32, 32 for 32 voices. And then it's a weighted piano action keyboard, 76 keys. It goes all the way off the camera here. Definitely the widest synth I've ever had on this desk. And it's the same piano action you get on the Ensoniq TS-12. You could swap the keys in and out of that. So like you said, DeCarmick, it's a weighted action 76 key, 32 voice. So there's a bunch of different versions, like I said, and there was 21 polyphony SQ-1s, and then later on we got the 32s. So it's going to be a super fun one. Another thing before we jump in real quick, I want to say a huge thank you to Ripe143. I think I'm saying that right. I think that was the name on it. I hope I'm saying it right, Mikey, but thank you very much for giving me this synthesizer. So my friend, local boom bap producer down here in South Florida, he knew I was into this type of thing and he gave it to me. And so I've decided to pay it forward as well, and I'm going to be giving it away for free to a friend of mine who was, she was saying, hey, I really want to get into playing keys, and I'm looking for a piano action keyboard. And then like mysteriously this just showed up for free at my place. So I thought the best thing I could do is pass it on to someone else. So with that out of the way, I just want to give you guys a little roadmap for how the stream's going to go. We're going to check out some of the sounds of the synthesizer and talk about it. And then we're going to go through the history of Ensoniq and how we actually get to a synth like the KS-32 from 1992. We'll talk about the initial price, and then we'll convert that. We'll adjust that for inflation, compare it to the street price, or what you could expect to pay for one of these bad boys nowadays, and look at the devaluation, stuff like that. And then we're going to get to the crown jewel of this show, which is going to be, you guys get to vote on a criteria of 12 questions that the members of this community and myself have created to determine if the Ensoniq SQ-1 is a legendary synthesizer. So it's going to be a really fun stream tonight. So with that, can I get a scum cheers in the chat? This first patch, Voyage, is super cool. That's right, buddy. There is the ESQ1. And so as though the ESQ1, their version has the, what's it got? The 32 waveforms. I believe let me see if I have it written down here, how many waveforms we get in the ESQ1. It's got a few less waveforms, but it's got way more. It's got like 100 different waveforms-ish. I'll see if I have it in my notes later, including trans waves, which we wouldn't see from Ensoniq until the VFX, which I think came out in about 1989 or so. So this is a super cool. So like when I saw this at first, I was like, there's no way. This is just a cheap, whatever. I had no idea it was like the most expensive SQ-1 series synth. For some reason, of the other like 6 or 7 models, they all say SQ-1, SQ-1 Plus, SQ-1 Plus 32, SQ-2, SQ-2 Plus, like their names like that. And then for some reason, the last one, KS. I have no idea why. That is true. The best way for a synthesizer to end up getting onto the legendary synth test is to be getting sold. But like I said, I just felt like the best thing I could do with this synthesizer was to give it away. Something I want to point out real quick, we're going to go to the ROM, and I'm going to pull up Dirt Guitar here. Super cool. And you can hear that this synth does have aftertouch, actually. So it's a lot like the Ensoniq TS-12 that came out, I think, the following year, 1993. Could be wrong about that by about a day or so. I do have, so my deal was, hey, you can have this synth, but there's 3 dead keys right here. Should be a super simple fix. She's out in Colorado, so there's plenty of great music stores out there, techs who can fix it. Easy fix. But we do have aftertouch. To Karmic, yeah, I'm a pretty terrible keyboard player anyways. That's about as fast as I can go. Yeah, but that's really pushing it for me. I'm not great. Going back to this grand piano. So different versions. The original SQ-1 didn't have this big grand piano sound in it that Ensoniq ended up being famous for. It went into all of their further products, including this one. So let's check this out. Really great. Now, not incredibly velocity sensitive if I play quietly. I guess it's there, yeah. The volume is there, but the tonal difference is not so dark. But the reverb is really great, and the reason is because this has an Ensoniq ESP chip in it, which is the same chip. It debuted in the VFX, and they put 4 of them in the Ensoniq DP4, which is their most, it's like this legendary effects processor. But essentially, the reverb we're hearing is the same reverb you would hear in the DP4, same algorithms and everything. You've got the 8-voice chorus from the DP4, that's all built in here. So again, I sort of judge this by its cover because it just looks like a very standard, like not a synth, but a keyboard, maybe a little workstation. But that's actually not the case. It's a fully fledged SQ-1, which is pretty goddamn similar to a VFX under the hood. KS stands for Keyboard Studio. I mean, yeah, they were definitely trying to sell this at a high price point. This went for, I think, about $500 more than the SQ-1 did a couple years later. Usually prices kind of come down by a couple of years. Noel, it depends on what you care about. So the ESQ-1 is going to have potentially a better analog filter in it than the SQ-80. I haven't done a comparison, so I can't say, but that's what people say. The SQ-80 has more waveforms and polyphonic aftertouch. And then the VFX, which came out after that, loses the analog filter, but retains the polyphonic aftertouch. It really is great. And then, so we've got a lot of patches. Really, the fidelity. I almost want to say sounds better than my TS-10. Lots of high end there. Adapt, I mentioned it at the beginning of the stream. So the KS-32 is actually just the plus version of the SQ-1. It's the final version in the SQ series. And because of what Ensoniq said, which is that KS stands for Keyboard Studio, they decided to change the name for the last one, but it is an SQ-1 under the hood. Like most, for whatever fucking reason, back in the day, all of the brass samples were so bright. we've got a choir patch here, but I want to jump over into the ROM, and I think it was around here. This patch is so good. It's called Oz. Checking out the low end. Really cool patch. So that's sampled for the Legendary Synth Sample Pack, which, by the way, the samples that include the KS-32 went out today, so it's version 2.0. That is, if you've spent the $10 on Legendary Synths Volume 2, you get all the updates for free, all the new synths that we add. I think we're getting pretty close to the end of this one. I think these went up to about 88 patches or so. So really cool. Definitely worth getting your hands on. The Legendary Synth Sample Pack basically is my way of trying to give back to the community. $10, you get 100 patches, 2,100 plus samples. So the amount of work that goes into creating 2,100 stereo wave samples is a lot, with the looping and everything. You get in SFZ, so you can load it into Contact and Serum and all of that stuff. And we're working on turning it into Omnisphere patches too. Which actually brings up that if you're not a member of this channel, this Monday, this would be a good time to become a member of this channel, because this Monday we're going to be doing a members only live stream where we're going to be taking those Legendary Synth samples from Volume 1 and turning them into Omnisphere patches. So it's been a lot of fun. It's like a very chill sort of vibe for the stream. So it's a different kind of atmosphere, and I like that. And you can kind of get inside my head of what I'm thinking of when I do sound design a little bit more than we do in these streams. What else is coming up? Tuesday, we're going to have a video on Mars, which is a polyphonic or paraphonic vacuum tube based synthesizer from Russia. That's going to be super cool. That's going to be a video coming out on Tuesday. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I know it sounds stupid, but it really does help the channel. And then Wednesday, we're going to have a live stream on that too. So it's going to be a good week to be hanging out over on the Vulture Culture channel. We're going to have 3 new videos up next week. So definitely. Nenko, welcome. So I want to go back to the other ROM and see if we can find this one that was really cool. I think it was called... We got like a lot of, these sorts of ePiano. It's a little loud. Yeah, the Nixie tube display is just crazy. But my favorite of these is this one, Crystal Keys. Probably taking some inspiration from the JD800 Crystal Rhodes patch. And Kaja, I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly, but yeah, it actually really does sound like a VFX, because under the hood it kind of is, right? It's got trans waves and everything. Where they chose to strip some stuff out was like they pulled back the number of sequencer lanes and things, but there's still quite a lot of synth here, which is super cool. What else do we need to cover? I think, let's see, let's go look through some of these. We've got organs. We've got different synthy type stuff. And I believe you can load SQ-1 patches in here because it's the same engine. But you could hear that they were going for like stuff that keyboard players would want with this particular model. So they sort of curated the patches. It's like a really high fidelity M1 marimba patch. That one's super cool. This is where, for me, I'm like, I'm too much of a snob, right? I can hear that the phasing of the digital oscillators is not to my liking. I think that, you know, if you want this type of sound, you're going to get better served by something like an SY-77 or 99. Can I get some scum blips in the chat? I really like this flute pad. Definitely D50-ish. Nenko, I'm based out of South Florida. So, you know, Adapt, all I could say is you got a lot of love here in the community. So can I get a scum cheers for Adapt real quick? Cheers, guys. There we go. Pulse wave. So I have a feeling this is using the pulse wave trans wave that's in the synth, but I can't guarantee that. Again, okay synth sounds. Super pads, okay. So again, to me, the sonic palette is very in that SY-7799 sort of territory. And the fact that this synth and all of the Ensoniq synths after SQ-80 until Fismo had no resonance, right? So the only way to kind of get resonance into your synth sounds was to use a trans wave, and in this case, we just don't have it, right? It's nice. It's okay. Analog power. Prepare yourself for not a lot of power. You know, it's that type of a thing. Legend's pretty cool. Whoa, baby. Let's just... Yeah, I think, you know, if you were to have to put a gun to my head and say, which should you get, a VFX or this? You might still get me to go for the VFX. Which I'm curious to see how that affects the score tonight, because I think that's probably the biggest problem with the synth, is just that it's pretty badass, but to me, it's not really a mini Moog, right? I like, of the analog patches, this one's my fave. JD 990 is probably the best digital synth ever made, so I agree with that for sure. But it is an interesting point. Little marimba. Little of that action. Love these great ultraviolet sounds. Let's check out the drums so we have some... Can't really play drums on a keyboard. It's a pretty nice snare, actually. I could use that. I'm from Miami, bitch. Kind of could be used even for some like Sade. Oh, rap kit. Come on now. I don't think they knew what rap was. That's what rap is, isn't it? Yeah, that's how you make rap. You know. Not a bad... I might have to sample this fucking thing. It's kind of cool in its own way. Lots of... Couldn't actually make it all the way through. Vocal kit. Enka kit. Glad someone put that in here. Pretty good. Timpanis. Kind of cool. General MIDI kit. Yeah, so we've got a lot of drums, and then jumping back into the other bank, we've got guitars. Pretty good Stratocaster. I already did dirt guitar. Alarock, I really like the Mark Tree samples in the JD800 because they kind of layer in nicely in the background of a pad. That's funny, Synthsonic. So this is what I didn't love about the TS10 too, is these sorts of more, you can hear that this is a static. Very kind of, yeah. This one's better just by virtue of... just the effects are so much nicer. Yeah, pretty good stuff. Do we have a harmonic one? Some basses, you know. Kind of can skip that shit. Orchestra strings. I didn't sample the strings for the sample pack. This one's my favorite though, Enka strings. I is actually a pretty good patch, but you know, for me, the thing was Legendary Synths Volume 2 was starting to get a lot of like ROMpler-y type sounds in it. I didn't want it to just be that. This one, wait, no, what was it? Wait, I've gone past it. It was somewhere in here. Oh well, doesn't really matter. LA Brass, This Sucks. That's very much, you know, the D50 sort of sound. I didn't like it on the D50. That patch sucks too. It's kind of the same thing, just with reverb. It's fine. Some clarinets and stuff. Very good. A lot of my problems with these types of sounds is it's just like the Proteus in 1989, which I guess was only a year before the SQ-1, really nailed these types of sounds, and I still feel like it's not, I don't know. I'm sorry to hear that. What's up, Keith? How are we doing, brother? Yeah, just this type of stuff. I mean, okay. Surprised there's only really one of those. Kind of like some of these splits. That hurts too. Oh. You still get that staticiness. So, those are some of the patches. Now, again, like I said, we can actually pull in patches from the SQ-1 because that's what the synth is under the hood. But I want to give you guys a little bit of taste of what was going on with the sound of this thing before we jumped into the history. So why don't we go ahead and do that, though, by the way. So this is going to be fun. Now, jumping into the history here, I do want to say, guys, this was going to be pretty deep because we covered the Ensoniq Mirage on this channel a few years ago, and we didn't really get a chance to do a full Legendary Synths episode on the Mirage. We actually did it as part of a bunch of synths that I had sold already as a sort of members-only live stream. So can I get a cheers to the members of this channel? You guys are the lifeblood who keep this place. You keep the lights on in this motherfucker. So cheers to you guys. The history of the Ensoniq SQ-1 goes all the way back to 1981. So Bob Russell, who was the system programmer and architect on the VIC-20, which is an early computer, and Bob Jans, or Jans, I think, engineer of the said ship, were upset. They were working for this company that ended up being the creators of Commodore 64. And they basically, the company was focused on the business, and they were like, no, we can do this, but consumer grade. We can make it possible for people to actually be able to afford computers. And when the Commodore 64 came out, it came out at a price like $595. There's a story that like when it was announced, the business people at Atari at like the booth over were trying to sell some shit for like over $2,000, and they were like, how could you possibly sell that? And they were like, well, we're a top-down company, like we're making everything. And it became the best-selling computer ever, right? And part of what Bob Jans did was he designed the SID chip, which was a single chip sound synthesizer chip, basically. And so it was super cool. And he was thinking even back then that could end up in polyphonic or polytimbral synthesizers. So let's jump ahead to 82, spring of 1983. And the team of people that were working on the Commodore 64, these guys, so we've got the former MOS technology was who was working on that, is Bob Jans, Bruce Crockett, Charles Winterbull, David Zimbicki, and Albert Charpentier, something like that, started a new company called Peripheral Visions. And that was how they got the Commodore 64 going. They also built a computer keyboard for the Atari 2600. But But what ended up happening is there was a video game crash of 1983. Now, I wasn't around in 83, so some of you guys can tell me if this sounds familiar to you guys. But basically, video games were huge, and then all of a sudden there was like this crash in 83. And then Commodore actually sued this new company saying that it owned the keyboard project. So it was kind of like a non-compete issue. And so the company renamed itself Ensoniq and changed direction. And instead of building a computer, they designed a musical instrument. There's an article, Sound on Sound article I read from Craig Anderton in 1984. And this was, Anderton ran into Bob Jans, and they were looking at some new gear. And Jans had been a frequent collaborator to Polyphony magazine, which was the predecessor to Electronic Musician, actually. And when they were chatting, Jans reportedly turned to him with a sly grin and said to watch for a massive price reduction in sampler technology the next year. He actually said it was going to be a 10-to-1 ratio. And that's what happened. The Ensoniq Mirage came out. It was the first product, and it was shown at the February 1985 NAMM show. And the price was $16.95 for this. So I want to give you an idea how crazy it was to have a sampler that came out for $16.95. An EMU Emulator 2 sold for roughly $8 to $10,000, and that's not in inflation adjusted dollars. That's $8 to $10,000 in $1985. And the Fairlight CMI Series 2 system, the cheapest, like the basic entry level, was $28,000. If you want to hear what that sounds like, Hans Zimmer used it to score the Rain Man movie. It's also used on Running Up That Hill. So to put out a sampler for $16.95 is crazy. And we've done a bunch of videos actually on the Mirage. Again, they're a few years old now, but if you're interested in how that sampler sounds, there are some on this channel. So definitely worth checking out. But this was a killer product. It was a market killer. And the core of the Ensoniq Mirage was the VLSI sampling chip, the Q chip. It was also known as ES5503 DOC, or digital oscillator chip. And it would go on into their further synthesizers like the SQ-1 and so on and so forth. Ensoniq spent about $1 million developing this chip. And each chip integrated more than 20,000 individual components. So this is like kind of IC technology pioneered by companies like Yamaha, really made it possible for instruments like this to occur. The Mirage sold nearly 8,000 units in the first year. It eventually sold more than 30,000 units during its production life. So when it sold 8,000 units in the first year, that was more than all of the samplers that had ever been sold up to that point, which was pretty crazy. So let's see. Also, just as a kind of a side note, the Mirage was one of the first consumer products to use the new 3.5 floppy inch format. And so the earliest Mirages actually shipped with the Shugart Venture SA300 drive, which was one of the first micro floppy drives to ship in a consumer product. So everybody, I'm going to just catch my breath for a second. Can I get another scum cheers in the chat? That's right, Ensoniq. Actually, the Mirage is still kind of perplexing to me, like really high up. It's such an iconic sound. I myself find the interface too counterintuitive and too difficult to work with, but you gotta hand it. It's got a sound. It's super cool. Curtis chewy filters. It's good. In 1986, after an agreement with the Apple company, the same ES5503 digital chip, Q chip, went into the Apple II GS personal computer. So this went into all of the Mirages. There was 4 models: the ESQ-1, the ESQ-M, which is the rack mount version, the SQ-80, which is my personal fave, the SDP-1 piano module, and then I think it kept going. So in 1986, Ensoniq puts out the SQ-1, which is their first synthesizer, which is where we're going to tie in. We're getting to how this ties in here, because the SQ-1 is very much a continuation of what they were doing with the ESQ-1. So that synthesizer had 32 waveforms, 3 oscillators per voice. This still has the same 3 oscillator per voice design. Velocity controlled 8-stage envelopes. Those are present here too. And what else? The biggest thing was an 8-track MIDI sequencer. So in almost all of Ensoniq's products, one of the critical things is the sequencer that was built into it. And people were basically asking, are the Ensoniq synths like, is it a synth with a sequencer or a sequencer with a synth? Because that's how powerful it was. And, you know, the Korg M1 gets a lot of credit for pioneering the term workstation, right? Which was a keyboard that could do everything. But in some ways, ESQ-1 came out 2 years before and really sort of made it, you know, kind of got there first. And then what was it? Then it would be maybe the following year, ahead of the M1, the SQ-80 would come out with a really powerful sequencer. And that synth had drums with it. So you could really make the argument the SQ-80 was the first workstation. But this sequencer thing became a big part of the model for Ensoniq moving forward. So it's 1987. SQ-80 comes out, polyphonic aftertouch, 43 different additional waveforms, 5 drum kits. What else? It's kind of got like a pseudo reverb extra stage to the release. It's not very good, in my opinion. I don't ever use it. Then we have, you know, the EPS arrives, which is the next version of a sampler. And they actually drop the price of the Mirage down to like $899 at that point, which is just ridiculously cheap. And with the EPS-1, one of the big deals here is that it's the first time that we're talking about a Ensoniq synth that doesn't have an analog filter. So we drop the resonance, and none of the following Ensoniq synths would have resonance except for the very last one, the Fismo. So it was using the ES5504 DOC2, which essentially gave it that ability. So then we get, in 1989, we get the VFX, which is basically a continuation of the SQ-1, SQ-80. VFX is the next one. The big thing that the VFX added was the effects. So they pioneered the ESP chip, and that ESP chip is a 24-bit effects chip that went into the Ensoniq DP4, the later legendary multi-effect unit. But it was actually pioneered for the VFX, and it's the same chip that's in this synth, actually. So it's got all of those same sounds. The 8-voice chorus is great. The reverb that's modeled off of the Lexicon 224 XL, I think, is very good. And then there was the VFX SD, which added an SD card and put a sequencer back in there. So then finally we get to 1990. So we get to the SQ-1. And again, I've said it a bunch of times this stream, but this is an SQ-1 under the hood. And what they wanted to do was basically take the VFX SD and strip down some of the features. So the SQ-1 had a 16-track sequencer, whereas the VFX SD had a 24-track, but it kept a lot of this essential DNA in there. So it's still got the trans waves, the onboard effects. And let's talk about all the different variants now, because there's a bunch of SQ-1 variants. An interesting little fun fact about these synths is at this point, the term workstation was already so overused. Like a year later, after the M1 came out, maybe 2 years later. So they branded it as a personal music studio. That was their sort of like jargon to differentiate themselves from Korg. And you'll notice that this one's now a MIDI studio. So really leaning in on that a little bit more, meaning that's very MIDI controllable. So we've got the ESQ-1, which is a 61 key keyboard version, 21 voices. SQ-R, which is the rack mount version. The SQ-1 Plus, which has the 16-bit piano wave. So those are those ones that we heard at the beginning. And if we go to some of these other ones, like we have variations on that theme. depending on if you want a drier one. This one's called Lush. Very beautiful. So the SQ-1 Plus was the first to have this really deeply sampled piano sound in it. SQR Plus is the same idea, just with the 16-bit piano waves. SQ2 was a 76-key keyboard version, 21 voices. SQ1 Plus 32, I'm not kidding, is a 61-key plus version with 32 voices and additional 16-bit waves. Then we have the SQR Plus 32, which you can guess is the rack mount version. Then we get to the SQ232, which is a 76-key 32 voice and additional 16-bit waves version. And then finally, in 1992, we reach the final evolution of the SQ line, the KS-32. And it just frustrates me that it's not SQ-32. I don't know why they didn't call it that, but maybe at that point they wanted to, again, kind of elevate it a bit, because we've got these piano-weighted keys. And there's no doubt in my mind that if they hadn't created this, they wouldn't have released the Ensoniq TS-12 the following year, which is the same key bed as this, but with the Ensoniq TS-10 engine. So this is a Vulture key bed too, by the way. Let me see if there's anything else I want to mention about this before we get into essentially how Ensoniq went out of business. I'm going to take another little sip. So can I get a scum cheers? I hope you guys are enjoying the history. It's a lot of fun. I love the history of these instruments, but I know it's not for everybody. So there will be chapters down below. I should have said that before if you want to skip right past this in the future. But yeah. So cheers, guys. Yeah, they had a lot. They had a lot of releases. Gingy, how's it going? Mars Media, welcome. Just seeing you guys there. Okay, so we have a bunch of other really great products. I've already mentioned the TS series a lot. The ASR10, of course, huge sampler. KT series, MR series, ZR series, the DP2 and 4. So we actually had the DP4 came out, then the DP4 Plus, and then the DP2, which I've thought about getting because it's essentially a DP, like half a DP4. And I don't know if I need a whole DP4. I just kind of want to have some sort of Ensoniq thing. We'll see. In 1994, so 2 years after this, Ensoniq made its first direct move into the PC sound card market with the Soundscape S2000. This is important because this has a lot to do with why they got bought out. So it basically was a full digital audio and sample-based synthesis card with a 2 megabyte Ensoniq built ROM patch set. One ad line from the product said, "Finally a sound card from a company that knows sound." Another claimed that the same wavetable technology driving their $3,000 keyboards was now available in your PC. So when we're coming into the company really floundered. And I always think of the TS-10 and 12 as really being emblematic of that. Those synths are coming out in 93, right? But they're really still at their core ESQ1s. They still have the vacuum fluorescent display. This actually doesn't. So on those synths, you've got bigger displays. You can check out the videos I've done on the TS-10 if you want on this channel to see the difference. This has this little guy, which is a knock against it. But those synths, you know, they're cool. They have, you know, hyper waves in them and stuff like that. But they're still very much, in a way, the ESQ1, the SQ80, really the VFX from 89, and they hadn't really iterated at all in 4 years. It was more or less just more waves, right? You know, the TS series has over 200 waves. This is more like 120 or so. So that's happening. And then there wasn't that much coming from Ensoniq for the next couple of years. And there was two kind of like products they went in on, which would have been, and both came out in 1998. One is Paris, which was their answer to Pro Tools, actually. So it was an integrated hardware system that worked with their Paris software. And it was buggy as shit. It wasn't full like CD quality audio. Interestingly, it was like slightly less. And it came out and wasn't selling a whole lot. and then the Fismo. So a lot of you guys will know the history of the Fismo. It might be the most iconic synthesizer. It certainly got the most iconic paint job of any Ensoniq synthesizer. But the Fismo came out, and it was like a last ditch. I always call it a Hail Mary synthesizer, kind of like the Matrix 12 or some of the other synths that are like the last synth to come out from a company are often like the biggest and craziest. It was strange, ambitious, deeply misunderstood. It pushed Ensoniq's Transwaves concept all the way back to the VFX, remember? And they're in this synth too, as far as it could go though. So now everything in the synth is a Transwave, pretty much for. During its short commercial life, it received heavy criticism for its unreliable power supply, unfinished operating system, idiosyncratic editing. The display was limited to a 4-character 7-segment readout, which is crazy to put into a flagship. And the worst thing, in my opinion, was you needed external software to even access all of the parameters. So even though it had like knob per function, which is not a thing Ensoniq ever really did, so much about the synth was locked behind needing a software editor. And guess what? That was buggy too. So roughly only about 500 to 2,000 standard units were made, and then even less, like 500 or less rack mount units were made. There was DSP chip problems with that synth. So that year, Creative Technology made a bid to acquire Ensoniq for $77 million, and they accepted. And their interest was not in their instruments at all. They were actually interested in Ensoniq's sound card technology, going back to the sound card I was talking about. That's what they wanted to buy. They also owned at that point EMU, which of course was one of the pioneers of the synth world. They pioneered the polyphonic keybed that was used in the Prophet 5. And at that point, after they had been basically defeated in the sampler market by Ensoniq, they went into the ROMpler. And so, I mean, the Proteus was another like killer product. So they were kind of at every stage when we're talking about analog modular. That's how EMU started. And then they were the supplier of the keybed for the most famous polyphonic synthesizer of all time, Prophet 5. And then they moved into samplers because of a dispute of Dave Smith basically not wanting to pay up anymore. So they put out the emulator as a kind of a fuck you to sequential, but it also ended up being hugely profitable for them. And they, of course, always squashed the beef, and it was all fine later on. And then the Proteus really was the greatest ROMpler of all time. And so they were really maintaining. But by the time we get to this point, they had already been acquired by Creative Technologies. And there was actually a few products that were sold after Ensoniq was bought out. And that would be the Ensoniq Halo, I think. But the thing about the Halo, it's a keyboard, but it's really a Proteus 2000 in disguise. It's just what the wave samples are. I think it has this key piano sound in it. It's some Ensoniq based waveforms, but it's essentially a Proteus 2500, which we're going to be checking out on the channel within about the month or so. So anyways, thank you guys so much for making it with me all the way. Yeah, it did have the EMU Z-plane filter, so that's worth talking about. But yeah, thanks for making it with me. I know the history section was a little deeper than normal, but we've never really had a chance to talk about Ensoniq on this channel. So yeah, there's the E4. My friend Carl from Angel Spit's a huge fan of that. If you want to check out, I did an interview with him about dark ambient music, and he talks about how he uses that for that. Can I get a scum cheers for everybody who enjoys history as much as me? I'm glad you guys enjoy it. So a couple more things before we jump into the legendary synth test. If anybody was wondering, this synthesizer is huge, and it would require 57 Pop-Tarts to cover the whole thing. Let's talk about the street price of this instrument. So the street price I determined by averaging the cheapest 3 synths in good condition, which I define as every key, knob, and function working. I don't mind a little battle scar or patina, but nothing is broken. Everything works internally. And I averaged the 3 with the shipping included. That's important to recognize when we're talking about what I define as the street price of an instrument. So let's talk about the initial price. So the SQ-1 came out in 1990 for $1,595. I think Noel said he got it for cheaper than that, which is pretty badass. And if we adjust that for inflation, that's $4,100. So just keep in mind how expensive synths were back then. I would like a Fismo too, Swan. $4,100 is a lot of money today, like to buy a synth like that. So we really are living in the golden age. So the street price on an Ensoniq SQ-1, you can get them today for about $725, which if you do the math, the devaluation is 82%. And what's crazy about that, something I didn't know when we started doing the legendary synth test, is how predictable the street price of a synth today is based off of what it sold for initially. So the median price of all of the synths that we've checked out on this channel, the median devaluation is 83%. And you'll see it time and time again in the legendary synth test that the price of a synth today is about 82 to 84% most of the time. There's some exceptions. Some of the Moog synths, obviously a CS80 is going to cost about what it cost back then. But most vintage synths actually have devalued by an incredible amount. When you consider you can buy one of these for $725 versus $4,100 is what it would be if it was launched today. I did a little bit of similar math for the KS-32 for anybody who's interested. So when this came out in 92, it came at a launch price of $2,195, which was $5,250, which is interesting because having looked at a lot of the inflation, year to year, sometimes inflation was pretty rough, but apparently from 90 to 92, the inflation wasn't that bad. And so it went up, but it didn't go up crazy. So this synth would have been $5,250 at the time, which definitely would have been very premium, upper end of the market sort of cost price point. And there was simply not one of these for sale on Reverb right now. So there's really no fair comp. I think I saw one local only. So if you were like determined to get this synth, you could see if that person would ship it to you. But essentially, I think it's fair to say that the KS-32 probably would be in the same ballpark as an SQ-1 or any of the rest of those synths. I think the one thing I'd say about this is it's a very heavy synth, very big synth. So the shipping's probably going to be a little bit more. So if anything, tack a couple $100 on for additional shipping, worst case scenario. So that is that. Guys, I've got good news. You know what time it is? It's time for the legendary synthesizer test. The main event. This is a painstakingly devised series of 12 tests created with the help of you guys. I'm going to pull up a minute timer on my phone so you guys can help me out with this. So here's how it works. For a synthesizer to earn the title of legendary, it needs to score 11 points or more. If it scores 9 or 10, it's still an iconic synth. 7 or 8 points, it's a classic synth. 6 points, it's respectable. 4 or 5, and the synth is just mid. Anything less, and we're diving into dubious or even impoverished territory, where synths gather dust in the back of the studio. So how do we score? I'm going to read each question aloud, and then post a poll in the chat. Yes means that the SQ-1 passes the test, and no means it's out of tune with our expectations. I'm going to say that again because sometimes there's some confusion here. Yes always means it passes the test. So sometimes the way I write the questions is a little double negative-y. So if you think it should score the point, the answer will be a yes. And if you think it fails, the answer is no. So just make sure to read the question before you answer. Sometimes it's an issue. And also, as my friend Dubstation Zero likes to remind us, this is the legendary synthesizer test, not the functional synthesizer test. So when you're voting, it means, is this one of the most legendary synths of all time? You have 1 minute to vote on each question. You, the chat, get half a point for each question, and I contribute the other half. So if you love or hate the SQ-1, let your voice be heard. The last question counts for 2 full points. Let's see if the SQ-1 can filter through the competition. Are you guys ready? Let's start the test with the John Hammond test. Did the synthesizer bring innovation to the industry or move synthesizer tech forward? I'm going to put the poll in the chat right now. It's in the chat. And I'm going to start a minute on the clock now. That's pretty good if you could get one at Goodwill. ESQ1s, SQ80 for $375. That's sick, dude. Sick. As for me, we got 45 seconds left. I'm going with the SQ1 is going to fail the John Hammond test personally. And here's my reason. I don't think that... I think it's a derivative VFX. There's really nothing in the SQ1 series other than actually the piano is new. So they did add a really great piano. Is that enough to say that it pushed technology forward? The M1 had already done this. The Proteus SY-77, I'm going to go with no. I think it deserves a lot of credit, but not there. It's not going to get the point from me. And 52% of you guys agreed with me. And so we are going to not give it its first point, which, by the way, there we go, up on the screen. It's a stripped, Parb says it's a stripped down VFX, but it does have 16-bit samples. Good deal for the time. Yeah, I think it's a great deal for the time. I just don't think I can pass it for the John Hammond test. Question 2, the training day test. Is the synths interface straightforward enough for a beginner to learn? 1 minute on the clock here. So I am going to go with no, because I myself have not been encouraged to learn how to use it. I think it's just, this is not a great interface. Let's be real. And I think if you wanted to make the argument that the ESQ-1 or the VFX or the SQ-80 is got a good enough, like I really like programming the SQ-80. I actually don't think it's that bad, but it's got that bigger display, so you can cover a lot more info. Only having this and going into edit sound and, you know, going through all of this stuff is hard. It's a hard thing. 20 seconds left on the clock. I would say VFX was innovative. I think this was not innovative, in my opinion. Gingy rightfully points out that we probably need AI, like an AI chip installed in our brain to be able to get through this thing. Yeah, I just don't think it's really a thing. 74% of you guys agree with me that it's not going to get that point either. So off to a bit of a rough start here. We're going to go next for the Dale Cooper test. So, does the synthesizer sound or features take you to a place both wonderful and strange? Does it have the power to surprise you through unique timbres, odd behaviors, or combinations of features that take it beyond predictable subtractive territory? 1 minute on the clock. A novel combination of features that take it beyond predictable subtractive territory. Unfortunately, what do we think, guys? Are the trans waves enough? That's the question. It might rate bad. It's not looking great. How's it going, Infidebula? I want to hear your strong feelings. I think this is one of the problems with this era. I don't even know if I would score the VFX here. The damning bit of language in the question is beyond predictable subtractive territory. It doesn't even have a resonant filter. It does have trans waves. I don't think it has a lot of them. Connor Flynn says, just by the virtue of it being an Ensoniq, it does. I don't know if I can pass it, unfortunately. Yes, it is a ROMpler, a very nice sounding one. I think Parb said it perfectly. So 65% of you guys say, nope, it's not getting that one either. And so unfortunately, we're at, what is that? 0 for 3. We're moving into Kawaii K1 territory here. Here's a good one, I think. We'll see. Are there no cheaper hardware or software clones of the synth that sound as juicy and delicious? This is the Cypher test, if you're familiar with the character from the movie The Matrix. So it's got to sound as good or better. 1 minute on the clock. So of course it's worth saying, like Arturia's SQ-80V, ESQ-1 by Cherry Audio just came out. Really great ways to get the Ensoniq sound. Does it have everything that's in SQ-1? Actually, it doesn't. It doesn't have everything. If you don't get all of the piano samples and everything that went in either of those plugins. What is it, Keith, that you work with? Digital Sound Factory, I think, has the sample rights for these instruments. So that's a thing. You could go that way, but I wouldn't quite call that a clone because there is synth stuff in here. I, too, would like a nice steak a la rock. So 50. Ooh, we got 15 seconds left and we are on the border there. Connor Flynn says, I would take the K1 over this. In a weird way, I might agree with you. Parb says, don't forget this as a legendary TDA 1541 digital to analog chip. I didn't know that. Same output circuitry as their flagships. That's one thing I will say about the synth. Like if we had the Roy Batty test, which was an older legendary synth test, 52% of you guys said yes, and I'm going to give it 2. But if the Roy Batty test was like talking about build quality, and this would knock it out of the fucking park. I mean, this is a metal enclosure, feels like a tank, and you get that from Ensoniq. They're using the best components in their stuff, for sure. So we're finally got some skin in the game. We got 1 point on the board. Come on, we can do this. I'm gonna be harsh though. I'm gonna be real, and let's see. The aliens from Sign Test. Does the synthesizer avoid any major design flaws or missing key features? So this is one of those double negatives. So does it avoid any missing key features? If it has an Achilles heel, vote no. If it's a complete product, vote yes. You know, for me, it feels rough to do this because we're going to get to the Nostromo test, which nails the synth for its interface. But I still kind of feel like it fails this because it doesn't have a resonant filter and it just doesn't have an interface that makes you go, oh, I'm having a great time programming. It's very not, I'm having a great time, me personally, but I want you guys to vote with your hearts. So if you actually find this good, if this gets you rock hard, baby, then vote yes, because I think we can all live with an Ensoniq non-resonant filter at this point. It's part of the charm. But for me, it does not have analog filters per voice. It doesn't have poly aftertouch. It does have a weighted key bed, which I think should count because they had poly aftertouch in all of their synths. This was a deliberate choice to give it that piano action. 55% of you guys said no. D50 is much easier to program. Yes, I agree with that for sure. Adapt says it's so easy to use. That's okay. Yeah, that's true. Actually, Keith had a strong point there. That is just a home keyboard, right? I actually, it's really a very professional keyboard. But yeah, no, it didn't get that point either. And I don't want to see a single person vote yes on this one. The Elvira test. Does the synthesizer rank among the most beautiful or iconic of all time in terms of aesthetics? Everyone knows the most important part of how a synthesizer sounds is how it looks. 1 minute on the clock. I will never vote yes for a black box synth. I think this synth looks good. It's got this kind of like scoop to it. It's not actually just a boring design. I can't vote yes. I absolutely can't vote yes. If I was ever going to vote yes, it would be on like the D50 or the JX10. They're both beautiful to me, even though they are brutalist boxes, but I can't vote yes. Yeah, it's got knob weights. So, yes, that's right, Infidebulate. It can do poly aftertouch over MIDI. Cheers, guys. This is a hard no, but as Alarock pointed out, someone's going to vote yes just to fuck with me. Yeah, 10 seconds left on the clock. I think we know what the answer is going to be. It's just, it can't pass. This is not among the most iconic or aesthetic synths ever. It's just not. I don't think most of Ensoniq synths would pass this one, unfortunately. That's just kind of the nature. 85% of you guys agreed with me. It doesn't get that point either. Ooh, this is rough. This is rough for how good this synth is, actually. Ow. This is... I'm afraid for this synth. I think it's not gonna do great. We're at the Starscream test. Does the synthesizer transform into multiple roles, bass, leads, pads, and textures without losing focus? 1 minute on the clock. You guys, so ROMplers usually have an advantage here. However, I'm gonna go so far as to say no, because it doesn't really do synth sounds well. The whole like bass sound. Oh, let me get out of here. Let me get into select sound. If we go into the basses and we go to like, where we go, mini Moog bass. I don't know. Are we going to say that that's, again, is it a functional bass? It's functional. Is it about on par with the Korg M1? Yes, I failed that synth on this test as well, because it's just not as good as it could get. The ROMplers usually do pretty good on Starscream, but for me, this is one of those where it doesn't quite hit the mark. That's my opinion. 5 seconds left. 4, 3, 2, 1, and 52% of you guys said yes. So we have our first half point, which is good. I'm happy because it kind of deserves half a point. It's almost there. It does a lot really well, but maybe not quite when it comes to like the bassline area. The acoustic bass is good, Synthedon, for sure. But I still, one of the things that I consider for how I vote my half of the point, and that's all it is, it's just my opinion, is, you know, does it have something that makes the bass lines and the analog pads feel alive? Yeah, without losing focus though, Swan, for sure. Yeah, it's a little general MIDI, perhaps. The Nostromo test. Can you program the synth easily without excessive menu diving or apply the KS-32? 1 minute on the clock right now. So yeah, this is the definition of a synth that will fail this test, sadly. Cheers, guys. It's not gonna get a great score. I'm kind of like accepting that now. This synth is better than its score. Like, there's some other synths that will probably score higher than this that I like less. In terms of the sound is really good. But yeah, this is with 30 seconds left, guys. This is the definition of a bad interface. And here's the thing. Kind of to Keith's point earlier, this is great because $4,000 was a lot of money in 1990, and that was cheap for synths back then. I would like to point out that the Yamaha SY-99, which came out the following year from this, launched at like $9,000 in inflation adjusted monies, right? So for less than half of that, can you have like a more stripped down interface? I think so. I don't think it should be. They should be commended for putting a synth out at this price. It's just not going to be a legendary synth. God damn, this is rough. The Deep Space Nine test. Does the synthesizer have deep modulation possibilities that keep sound designers excited? Are we really going to say that trans waves are enough for it to pass. Yeah, it's I think it shines as an early ROMpler. I think it even can do some really cool transwave stuff. I just don't know if I'm gonna be able to say that that's enough, because we're still looking at wave, pitch, envelope, LFO, filters, envelope, amp, effects. You know, it's not. Yeah. Oh, he's already dead meme when you need it. I don't know if I remember that one. Yes, that's fair. That it's to try to rate this as a legendary sentiment that it was never designed to be one. It's supposed to be entry level. Yeah, that's fair. It's fair. Oof, it's rough, guys. It's real rough. Oof. 76% of you guys say no. And I'm voting no too. No worries, I read the typo aloud proudly. The Han Solo test. Has this synthesizer aged like a fine wine? 1 minute on the clock. What do you guys think? I'm gonna keep my opinion to myself on this one. I want to read what's in the chat. You did call it was gonna be a bloodbath. Is this a future classic? It's hard. I'll say this. It's hard because the VFX, I think you could make that argument for sure. You can also get VFX as often for very cheap. You know, SQ-80 VFX, ASR10, EPS, TS10 or 12, Fismo, all of those probably pass the test. This one's kind of interesting. Swan says, yes, it sounds good for what it is. It does pass the nice keybed test. Let's see. 74% of you guys voted no. And I am going to vote yes. And Adapt, not to pick on you, it's not classic. I agree with that. That's actually kind of the next test, the David Lynch test. But I'm voting yes. I think the synth, like for all the things we've been saying this stream, like how cool and good sounding this synth is, and actually how it is a fully fledged SQ-1 under the hood. If it had, like if it was knob per function, man, which, you know, SynthArc makes programmers for synths like this, it would be bad fucking ass. So I'm voting yes on this one. I'm not trying to shoehorn it in or muscle job it. I genuinely think that this synth has aged well. It's not classic though, which brings us to our next. If it had the VFD display, I probably would have voted yes. That's a fair point. The David Lynch test. Does this synth have a distinct character that left a lasting mark on the world? So this is where Adapt's head was at with how he voted on the last one. And of course, Adapt, you should vote how you think you should vote. That's the whole point of this, is it's not just about what I think. It's about what you guys think too. But for me, the David Lynch test summarizes very well your sentiment there, which is this didn't leave a lasting mark on the world. VFX did, SQ-80, ESQ-1, Mirage, EPS, ASR10, TS, maybe not the TS series, SD1, maybe not. I like to think they did, but they probably didn't leave a lasting mark on the world. So sorry for bitch slapping my microphone. Yeah. It's aged like unopened aluminum foil. It'll still do today what it did at birth, but it will not excite you. Yeah. I think that they're fucking rad synths too, Adapt. That's 1 minute. 80% of you guys said no. Unfortunately, I'm voting no too. I just don't think it's made the lasting impact. So now we reach the Vangelis test, and this is gonna be really interesting. So this is for 2 points. T-Bone, I'm actually not so sure, but presumably a lot, because it seems to have been a very profitable product, and that's why they made so many versions of it. That would be my guess. And Ensoniq was used to selling a lot of synths, but comparing, like, the VFX only had 2 versions and this had like 10, right? It feels like they were selling a lot of these. The last test, the Vangelis test, does the synth, the raw oscillators, or in this case waveforms, and filter have that magic quality? I want to vote yes. Get me over this hurdle. TS10, I would say it does. A lot of the same waveforms in this. The same effects. More trans waves in the TS10, but not by a lot. You know, like, I don't know why that should pass, but maybe it wouldn't pass. Maybe I wouldn't pass it because of the filter. I don't know. It's tough. Infundibulous says it was really popular in Canada. That's interesting. Connor Flynn, it's not going to be a historically high score. That's for sure. Yeah. That's true, Keith. You can load samples into the TS10. I love Ensoniq. And the point here, one of the big points, that's 75% of you guys said no. And unfortunately, I'm voting no too. So let's look at the score here. 1 point for the cipher test. 2 points. Oh, that really hurts for his final score of 2. Ow. This synth is so much better than that. It really is. It's a good synth. It's not a legendary synth for sure. One of the goals, though, with the legendary synth test is not to define synths solely by their moniker or their title, like legendary, iconic, whatever, but also price per point's a really big deal. Unfortunately, this one, yeah, I know, the recipient's gonna be like, what the fuck, Alex? It's a free synth. I don't want to hear any bitching. So we're gonna go in here and we're going to, what the fuck score is it? Actually, I need to look at the, I always have to, I don't know why I can't memorize this. 4-5 is mid, so that's 2 or 3 is dubious. Which, what? How many dubious synths do we have? We have 1 dubious synth, the U20. Oh, and it's so much better than a U20. And I'm worried because I also think like, oh man, this isn't even going to do well as far as price per point. $725, which is really good, actually, when you think about that you can get a synth like this. Divided by 2 is $363 a point. 363. Please, God in heaven, no, it's more expensive. Oh, it's so fucked. Oh, I hate that. Oh, man. Okay, so no use crying over spilled ICs. She's going into the dubious category. Oh. Okay. Oh. I really hate that. I do want to give it a pity point. Oh. Noel says it was good for me when I bought it. I really do think it's good. Infundibulous says the thing is it's a stripped down VFX SD1 which costs thousands more than. Those would pass a lot more of those tests, and nowadays it's only a couple $100 more than this. Sometimes VFXs are cheaper though, I've noticed. Connor Flynn hates that we've ranked the HT6000. I would say the HT6000 and famously the Kwai K1, even though it has 6 points, are synths that seem to have been designed to fail the legendary synth test. And I said several times on the HT6000 stream that we did on this channel that, like, it's cool. It's kind of like a mini It's got 4 oscillators per voice. It's just that none of the features feel stand out like above the rest, but coming together, it's a cool, interesting synth. You know, there's very few synths I wouldn't recommend at the right price, you know, especially from back in the day, because the competition was so stiff that when they put out a product, they were all trying to make something great, even with their cut down stuff. It's not like today where the cut down stuff is often compromised in some way. Yeah. Synthanon says, if you want a ROMpler to do okay with what they are, they need ROMpler tests in the rubric. I agree. I think I'm okay with ROMplers getting a little penalized in a sense, just because Sean Johnson brought this up on Facebook the other day, like about, and I remember saying, like, when RCA coined the phrase synthesizer that Bob Moog originally hated, the idea behind the phrase was that you could create a sound from scratch, like when you're making fresh pasta at your house, you know, instead of buying the store-bought stuff. And to me, ROMplers are store-bought pasta instruments, even though that can make an amazing meal, right? There is a difference between making the pasta yourself at home with something where you can really get in there. Yeah. But see, so what I would say about the SQ-1, because there's a lot of discourse about VFX, TS, SD1, all of those. But SQ-80, of course. Is it fun? Is a good one. That's kind of in there with the Dale Cooper, but we could add that in. And then, yes, of course, I'm not even going to touch that about the Nord Lead 2 Mom. EPS 16 Plus, of course, you know. The thing, yeah, I just think that ROMplers are... I'm a big ROMpler fan, but even I don't know. Like, some of my favorite synths, like the Proteus MPS Plus Orchestral, the Quai K4, the JD800, the Wavestation to a certain extent, right? This, the Ensoniq TS-10, VFX, you know, they're ROMplers, but they're awesome. I love that. MR61's easy to use. See, that's the thing, you know. So I think for Flynn, let's go over some of what's going on in the test, if you haven't seen the prices for a bit. So at the top, we have the Korg synths. So what I think was happening, if you look at the devaluation on those synths too, 41 and 46%, those synths were sold very cheaply back in the day. And so they haven't devalued very much at all. That's what's interesting about Korg, is they made some of the greatest instruments ever while they were trying to be the Behringer of the time and make cut down versions of products that they could slide price point in underneath Yamaha and Roland. Then looking at the next batch of the iconic synths, which, you know, this is the thing, digital synths have trouble. The K2000 is an incredible synth, Wavestation, DSS-1, SY-99, they kind of represent the pinnacle of what they do. However, they're not one knob per function. The depth is also a hindrance in some ways. And so with those synths, you get this iconic thing. And then when we go to classic, the Ensoniq Mirage, it's got 8 points compared to the 2 that we just had. And some of that's going to be because of things like it was the first of its kind. I did not yet, Synthanon. I haven't seen the cow food one yet. I agree. You know what? I need to get back on that wood pitch bender adapt. Quai K3 did really well. That's a high score for... I might have muscle jobbed that one a bit, but I just love that instrument. A Kai AX60. That instrument is so fucking good for what people pay for it. Like, I'm of the mind today that if you were to buy a vintage synth, the AX60 might be one of the best because it just sounds so good. I just think it's great. DSS-1, iconic sampler. The JXs all hang out in that classic territory. They're just a little bit simpler. The you can see the 10 got 8.5 points, so somewhere in there it picked up a point on the other ones. But they're all kind of in the same neighborhood with the Prophet 600. Now, Noel has my Prophet 600 that we've had on the channel. He bought it from me. And I have to say, now you'll see the street price is more expensive for those. But it is kind of a notch up from the JXs in a way. On the other hand, when we've been doing the members only live streams, whenever we get to a JX10 or a JX8 or a JX3 patch, because I kind of randomize it and just go, okay, let's load up the next sample and see what we can do with it. It always sounds so freaking good, like better than you would think. So the JXs are kind of like the AX60 in that they just kind of sound amazing. So when it comes to buying synthesizers, right? I want to say how many of these are above $1,000? Only about half of them. So if we look at the ones that at the street price here, the JXs, the Mirage, the Wavestation, the K3, and the K2000, those are really easy to recommend synthesizers because, and did I say the Wavestation? Because they're all under $1,000 and they're all really high scoring. And so their price per point is going to be really low too. You know, like sub $100 price per point. JX3P's right at $100. Highest price per point is the MS-20 in these categories. Still, $191 per point is not bad. Sorry, Noel. Griffith says, DSS-1, I got one used for nothing. It's so big and chunky, I have it leaning against the wall. Yeah, that is one thing about that, is you've got to have the space for that. Let me know if anybody else is having glitchy audio. Dubstation, welcome. How's it going? The K3 is so easy to program. Cheers, guys. Let's look at the respectable synths. So here's another one where you can get a lot of synth, a lot of bang for your buck. $54 price per point on a K1 is really good. When we, again, it's like around that $1,000 mark where you start seeing the price per points really skyrocket in the respectable category, going all the way up to the Moog Source. $373 is the highest price per point behind the HD 6000, but not far above the SQ-1, sadly. The SY99 price is way too high. Let me go back. Where was she? SY99, 1950. Well, here's what's crazy is I think I sold mine for more than that. I usually try not to. Hopefully the audio's back. Connor, you have a great night, okay? No one can hear me. That's weird. I don't have any drop stuff on my end, but sometimes it sort of like drops bitrate without actually dropping a frame, and that can cause issues. So let me know, guys, if it's kicked back in or not. Okay, people can hear me. So back to the analysis here. Yeah, so the K1 Poly 800, same thing. Like we were doing the members only stream the other night, which again, I'm not trying to whore out here, but they're a lot of fun. Becoming a member of the channel, I keep it really cheap. It's $5. It's the cost of, you know, a beer. Can I get a scum cheers in the chat? A month. Really, beers are like $7-8 nowadays at bars in Florida. And same thing for a cup of coffee is $7 or $8. So really $5. What it does is there's so many awesome people who are members of the channel who make it possible for me to keep taking off work on Wednesdays Anyways, when we bust open the Poly 800 in the members only stream, it sounds great. Like, you wouldn't know that it's not a Juno. Like, it sounds that good, for sure. And the MS-2000, for what it's worth, is my favorite of the virtual analogs. Can I get some Scum 6 in the chat? I'm not the biggest fan of virtual analogs. For some reason, the MS-2000 speaks to me in a way. Biggest problem is the 4 voices, though. Emojis are back. We're back in the house, baby. The EX5, F900, K5000, Moog Source, all cool synths, but we're starting to go up in paying more money for what you get with those. Then we get to the mid synths, which I love the mid category because it's the M1, the Nord Lead 2, and the JP8000, which all 3 of them are synths that I seem to like less than the average synth person. Yeah, I love the Poly 800. I think the MS-2000 has a good score considering it's doing better than the rest of the virtual analogs. It was, 57, I want to say, Pop-Tarts. 150, $300 is pretty good. What's the street price on the MS-2000? $500? Yeah, I think $500 is actually cheap from what I've paid attention to. I think they're probably closer to $600. Again, remember when you're, this is including the shipping. So it's usually like $400 plus 100 or $300 plus 200, something like that. The less I say about the Nord Lead 2 at this point, probably the better. Then we're in the dubious category, the U20 SQ-1. I just have that feeling of when we did the Kawai K1 where I'm like, the synth deserved better. But ironically, the thing is, if we were going to throw out one test, for me, it would probably be the Cypher test. And if we threw that out, it would lose another point. So it doesn't even have like any chance of picking up a point unless it was one of the other tests. And I don't really see it. And then, of course, the Casio HD6000. And that's the thing. I still think the HD6000 is a cool synth. I just wouldn't recommend that you spend too much money on it. That's what the decorations here really stand for. When I say that it's a mid synth, right, that's hurtful to some people. But for me, it's like, it's kind of, I'm talking about like, how much bang do you get for your buck? And trying to quantify bang with our legendary synth test that we've been working on making better over the years now. Ooh, the Studio Logic SL990. I think that's what Carl from Angel Spit uses. He loves that thing. That's his thing. K1 on eBay for $500. See, that's pretty expensive. They usually go for cheaper than that, I would say. But yeah, and that's the thing, Noel. I think I am a snob, and I am surrounded by analog snobs on this channel. So we've actually sort of run the JP8000 through the test twice to try to be more fair to it, and it still kind of floats where it is. It's just that it seems like enough of the people who are voting vote with like a sense of like they don't love the sound. And I think some of that is where we're at as a culture, as synth heads, synth sickos, as I like to call us, where we're really into analog synths right now and analog poly synths. And it doesn't mean they're not great synths. And the big thing to always say is the point of this channel is not to inspire gear acquisition syndrome. It's to play some sounds, and hopefully that is inspiring to you to actually use the gear you already got. And 2, I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum. This synth test is kind of like a fun, silly little thing that we do. And I try to apply as much, analysis to it as possible so that it can help people make better choices. But I have to say, I would prefer to have a Casio HD6000 and an SQ-1 over a U20 and an M1 you know? Or maybe, I mean, the thing that's nice about the Lead 2 and the JP8000, they've got great interfaces, right? Griffith brings up, we used to have a test called the Roy Batty test. And the reason that we pulled it off, talking about the risk factor in older synths, is basically when you buy a synth, part of how I factor the street price is that it's been serviced, it's good to go. So the problem is that, yeah, we got to get the Andromeda on this test. She's right there. Although with the Modal 008 in my hands and the Matrix 12, I'm spoiled for choice. But yeah, the thing is that because I factor that it's a repaired, good to go unit in the price, it felt kind of weird to have the Roy Batty test. Because whenever I would bring up the potential problems with the synth, like the red glue in the JD800 or the exploding batteries on the Poly 6, it's kind of like, well, nowadays if you're buying a Poly 6, it's got the battery repaired or it's listed as non-functioning. There's no in between. I mean, I'm sure there's one or two left in the world that have the original battery and they haven't exploded because people played them every day. But by and large, the vast majority have either been repaired, so it's not an issue anymore, or they're broken as fuck and you're trying to buy it for 200 or 300 bucks. So it just sort of felt like, okay, what are we doing with this test? Like on first blush, it seems obvious. Yeah, we need to know about the reliability of these vintage synths. But the thing is basically every synth made before 91, 92, right around the SQ-1 territory is through hole design, meaning it's meant to be repaired. It's much harder to repair surface mount technology synthesizers. That doesn't mean there's not a few, like Prophet VS is kind of scary, that has some chips that might not be that replaceable, but someone could clone them one day. But like the Andromeda A6, for instance, if something goes wrong with that, you're done. There's no fixing them. And sometimes that does unfortunately happen, Griffith, is that a synth just gets fucked up. I've got a VP330 in the shop right now, and it's never been serviced. So this is a synth from like 1977, 78, 79, something in there. Never been serviced once. Somehow the caps have not leaked everywhere, although they are corroding. And Ramiro from Severed Machines was like, I mean, I can try to, I was like, fully recap it, you know? But where was I going with that? Oh, he was talking about, it's got the Redicon chips in it. So early VP330s have a different chip than the Panasonic BBD that came out later that was used in like the Roland Dimension D and stuff like that. So these Redicon chips are really rare and they're in a bunch of like expensive guitar pedals. And to repair his VP330, this other guy who had one too had to go and buy a bunch of vintage guitar pedals to repair his VP330, which was rough, you know, but the chips still exist, you know. I can't wait to have the VP330 on the stream. I'm a little worried it'll be a short stream because it can only do like 3 things. That's it. Like it's not a Starscream synth. You know what I mean? Like it's just not. But what it does, it might do better than anything. Does anybody else have a favorite string machine aside from like a VP330? I know like my buddy Conrar has a Korg Trident. Pog Squash, it's not, in a sense it's not true, because the CS80, you can use any of the other CS synths to cannibalize to get those chips. It's just they're expensive, so people charge like $200-300 per chip, because obviously with the CS80 you need a lot of them. You need like 16 of them, whereas my Yamaha CS30 here, it's got 2 oscillator chips, 1 filter chip, 1 amp chip, right? The 70M has 12 of all of those, 24 oscillators. You know, but you need 32 oscillator chips in a fucking CS80, so it's just like a lot. Ooh, an ARP Omni. I saw one up for sale on eBay once and I bid on it, but I was like, I don't know how much I want to send. It was a pretty rough looking one, but it went for relatively cheap. And then I was kind of kicking myself. Yeah. The ensemble effect on the Poly 6 is awesome. The only thing I don't love is that it's not stereo. CS80 is not discrete, actually. We were having this discussion about discrete synths. Yamaha was one of the first synth manufacturers to really hone in on creating IC technology. That's what actually gave them the edge ahead of all of the other synth companies at the time, because Oberheim was still using discrete oscillators and filters in the SEM-based synths, the 2-voice, the 4-voice, and the 8-voice, and Yamaha was able to do that. But yeah, and in fact, you can, the VCO chips, I've said it incorrectly in the past. If you look up online or use AI, people will say that the CS70M has redesigned oscillator chips, but it's not true. They're the same chips that go in the CS80. And yeah, they are ICs like a Prophet 5. So yeah, highly proprietary in-house ICs. So that's good in the sense that, you know, if you need to repair one, you can buy, like if you need to repair one voice, you can get a Yamaha CS15, or I probably could use a CS15D or something like that. They're not that crazy. The Andromeda A6 though, those chips only exist in A6s and they're surface mounted. So you can't just like pop them out, right? And that's the thing. There is one chip in the Prophet VS that like just, that's it. Someone needs to clone it. ARP Omni would be great. Joy Division machine. All right, guys. I think we have reached the conclusion. I'm sad about the SQ-1 being a dubious synth. I think it's great. It's number 1 in my heart and number 6 in the charts. Actually, what I just want to know real quick, how many synths have we done so far? Let's go back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Number 1 in the heart, number 25 on the charts. Yeah, Synth Chaser, he is the best ARP tech in the world. Really cool channel, and I really want to get an ARP Odyssey 1 from him at some point. I just, you know, I kind of like fluctuate in being synth poor. Parbs, I agree that the SY77 was, and it was the first that had a fully resonant filter. Whereas the D50 right there has a resonant filter, but it's not full, it's not self-oscillating. Whereas the SY77 could. So D50 is kind of the first as far as a filter that had resonance, but it doesn't self-oscillate like an SY77. So they did over-engineer it, and they're both really great. I do miss, yeah, I could sell the 008 and recharge the bank. I could sell the 70M or the Matrix 12 too, but I, you know, I don't know. Someone was talking about, I actually took my Ensoniq TS10 off of Reverb because someone wanted to buy it at $3,000. And I felt kind of stupid because I'm like, well, I could just buy someone else's TS10. But I don't know. It's my TS10. I love it. You know, $3,000 is tough. So I think there's a few synths that I'll never sell. But then again, I sold my Monopoly, which is one of my favorite synths, and sold it for $1,000 more than I paid for this one. Like, so sometimes it's nice to, you know, with an 008, the problem with like a CS70M or an 008 is there's so few that you could very realistically go a long time before you could buy another one. And you might pay as much as you paid before. There's no guarantee you wouldn't. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I think I'm rambling enough. Continue to be excellent, and I will see you again. Members only stream on Monday. Tuesday, we're going to have a video out, 38-minute video on Mars, the paraphonic vacuum tube synthesizer from Russia. And then next week's live stream is going to be on that too. So continue to be excellent, guys, and I will see you there.